zoinks. Like, hey, Scoob, did you hear Nikki Blake is hosting a Scooby-Doo panel? No. Yeah. Like on today's Scooby-Doo episode, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy meet Nikki Blake. Yeah, and a Scooby Panel. Like, we need to get this puppy started. Okay, Nikki Blake, take it away, Scooby-Doo.
Welcome to the Scooby Panel. I'm your host, Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com. I'm joined by Wendy BRYDGE, and today we're going to be talking to Daniel Altiere. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to have you.
Sure, thanks for having me.
So Daniel, you wrote the two movies, The Mystery Begins and Curse of the Lake Monster.
Yes.
And what inspired you to become a writer?
You know, when I was in high school, I wanted to be a novelist. That was really my ambition. I was a big reader, and that was really my goal. But then I went off to Ithaca College, and Ithaca has a pretty strong communications department that has a pretty established film school. And I got involved in associate producing, and I wrote one comedy movie that did fairly well in some festivals. And then my brother was studying at Syracuse. He was studying film, actually. He was studying screenwriting. And after I graduated, I don't think he was out of school yet. He might have been. But he took me to see Miller's Crossing by the Coen brothers. And that kind of changed everything. That showed me what film could be. It's my favorite film to this day. And just the fact that it was a brothers team that did it just opened it up. And I started writing with actually a friend from college. And we wrote 4 screenplays, maybe. That was by the time that Steven graduated. He wrote another 4, and it just kind of felt silly to do it separately. So we teamed up, and we sold our first screenplay shortly after we moved to LA.
That's great. I think it's great that you and your brother wrote a lot together.
Quite a bit, yeah. About 10 years.
Nice. That's so cool. I don't know if me and my brother could do that.
Yeah, we had some trying times towards the end, but it was fun for a really long time.
Yeah. How did you get the job writing Mystery Begins and Curse of the Lake Monster?
Well, we had a relationship with Warner Brothers. They bought our first script, which was sort of a Starsky and Hutch takeoff about 2 guys that are convinced, they're 2 like 20-somethings who convinced they're Starsky and Hutch. They drive around town thinking that they can solve crimes. So Warner Brothers bought that. So that was our first sale. And so we had a relationship with the studio. And then somehow, I guess through general meetings, we started to form a relationship with a man named Matt Bierman, who was an executive at the studio at Warner Brothers. And I guess our agent had a good relationship with him too, or our manager as well. And it just came up that they wanted to do a prequel. They wanted to do an origin story to the Scooby movies. And so we basically, what happens is they just put that word out to agencies, and they send their writers to pitch, essentially. I don't know how many teams actually pitched, but we were one of them, and they just liked our idea. I saw one of your questions was, do the studios give you ideas, and do you go off and write them? And that's not even remotely how it happens. The studios do as little work as possible. They just say, we want to make a Scooby-Doo movie, and then they send it out to writers, just that. And we came up with the sort of Breakfast Club intro to The Mystery Begins, and just went from there, and they really took to it.
Nice. That's great. Did they allow you to have a lot of creative freedom with the movie, or did they change a lot?
No, they did. There wasn't a lot of changes at all. I think when the director came aboard, when Brian Levant came aboard, he had changes. But he's a very creative, very funny guy who's had a really great career. So we trusted him and wound up getting along with him really well, ultimately. So studio didn't have too much oversight, no.
And can you describe the process of writing the movies from start to finish?
We're pretty heavy outliners. So, we started with the pitch, which is basically, maybe a 15-minute version of the story. So you pretty much have the entire story figured out for a pitch. And then we go to an outline, which is very detailed. You sometimes will have whole scenes in the outline in kind of paragraph form. And we write the outline, and it's very detailed. And then that's about 15 to 20 pages. And then we just go to script. Usually when we're working on the outline, I'm the one doing the typing, and my brother's the one pacing. And then we switch roles when we enter the script. He's the one who does the typing for that. Then at the end of the day, he'll sort of go through it and do a couple quick edits. And then the beginning of the day, he'll do the same thing. And then we just write all day long. We really, we worked basically 9 to 5, probably for 10, 15 years.
Do you know about how much of your original script was actually in the movie versus like changes that were made? Not
a lot was changed. I don't think a lot was changed. We did something really fun after the script was written, before they produced it. There's something Brian Levant did with all of his projects, I think. We did something called a writer's roundtable. And he got a couple of old guys that he knew from when he used to write for Happy Days, these old sitcom writers that were just good friends of his. And we would just all read the script. We would participate as well. And we would all read the script and just come up with any joke we could think of. Just anything off the top of our heads that we could insert anywhere. Sight gags, written gags, whatever, or dialogue gags, that is. And then we would just go page by page in a Warner Brothers conference room, and just everybody pitches their jokes for each page. So, and these old guys were very funny and very skilled comedy writers. So we usually got a lot of great material in that. It was a lot of fun too. It was a really fun process.
That's great. What was it like coming up with the origin story?
It was, I think, first and foremost, it was a real honor. And we were talking about at the time, it was a 45-year-old canon, legacy. And just to be able to add to that with the actual origin story, it never didn't play a real part in our writing. We never took that for granted. I think we always felt that honor that we got to write the origin story that had not been written yet of how Shaggy met Scooby, and just how the gang got together. And I'm really proud of the way we did it too. I think the Breakfast Club sort of beginning is a really clever way of getting into it.
Did you find it difficult at all to come up with anything because Scooby was around for 40 years at that point?
No, I don't think so. It was writing both the scripts was really kind of a breeze. We didn't struggle with them at all. The fun stuff that my brother he is sort of the keeper a little bit more than I was of the Scooby torch. He knew exactly what we needed to include to satisfy the Scooby paradigm. He knew Velma had to lose her glasses. He knew Fred had to say, let's split up and search for clues. And we knew that we had to get a lot of funny Scooby-Doo dialogue in there with Shaggy. And we knew Shaggy had to obviously be petrified most of the time.
Did you guys get to work with the actors at all?
No, another film we did on our Dr. Dolittle film, they flew us to Canada when they were shooting it, and we did some on-set rewrites, but it wasn't really required, Scooby-Doo. We did get to go to the set. I don't know if we went on the first film, but I know we were on the set a couple days for the second film, but it was really just to be there and observe. We didn't really do any work there.
You had said before that you had written a third Scooby-Doo live action movie about time travel. Can you tell us more about the movie and how far you got with the script?
Well, we wrote the whole script. It was, and that was a lot of fun too. It was, the monster was a steampunk monster, like a steampunk robot that comes alive, that gets inhabited by a spirit or something. I don't recall and we also had a young H.G. Wells, because there was a time machine. They go to a museum, and H.G. Wells Museum or something, and the time machine, of course, they wind up inside of it, and it winds up to be operable, and they wind up going back in time to Victorian England. And Velma has a romance with a young H.G. Wells. That was one of the plot points of it. And it took place at Christmas, so it was supposed to be a Christmas movie as well. And when it came around to it, it was we were just about approaching the death of direct to video and direct to DVD, that is, and direct to TV, and it was too far before the whole streaming services started coming in, because that's sort of taken the place of those direct to DVD and direct to TV movies. Now they're all on Netflix and Hulu and such. But something you might not know, we also wrote the pilot of a TV series. It was going to be a live action TV series. And Warner Brothers was interested in doing it, but they sort of budgeted them out. And just to do the Scooby effects was going to be too expensive. They couldn't really justify it for a TV show. But that would have been a blast to do an actual, essentially a live action animated show that could have just played on all those marathons whenever they do new Scooby shows.
Yeah, that would have been really cool to see.
That would have been great.
And really different, because everything is animated. I mean, I personally do prefer Scooby to be animated, but you know, seeing a live action series, if it's done the right way, it would be a lot of fun. When you wrote the pilot, did you write it as more of like an adult series, or still a series that was
still for kids? Still very much for kids, yeah. Yeah, I've heard that there's sort of an adult Velma show. I haven't read much about it at all, but is Scooby not going to be in it? Did I hear that correctly? Or
yeah, no, Scooby won't be in it.
How does the community feel about this show?
The community is pretty split about it. Personally, I'm not thrilled with it. The first image that we saw was basically Velma standing up. On the floor was a girl with the top of her head cut off, and then every girl standing behind Velma was naked and covered in bubbles.
Oh my goodness.
So it's not quite the Scooby that I think I want to see, but I know that there's a lot of people that want to see an adult version of Scooby.
It's going to be interesting to try to the gymnastics that they do to get rid of Scooby and to get rid of the rest of the gang. I mean, why are they not there, essentially? Maybe it's when they all grow up or something and they go their separate ways.
It's still, they said it was still based in high school.
Oh, really?
So.
Wow, they're going to have to do some really tricky writing.
It's a very odd concept.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
You had worked on Norm of the North, which is computer animated. What are the differences between writing for an animated film and writing for a live action film?
Just the liberty you have, I guess. You could do so much more with your characters. You could do so much more with special effects because everything is animated. Still a talking animal to a certain extent, sure, but yeah, other than that, I mean, you're still dealing with the 3-act structure. You're still dealing with characters. You're still dealing with joke writing. So when it comes down to it, it wasn't that much of a leap to go to full animation. Matter of fact, we credit the Scooby-Doo movies with getting us credibility in the animated world. I think that's one of the reasons we got Norm of the North. That in our 2-year contract that we have with Disney Animation, we had a 2-year contract with Disney Animation to write like when they were doing the Tinkerbell movies and stuff like that. And then Pixar came along and sort of got rid of the whole department we worked for. But that also played a real part in us getting the credibility to write animated films.
Wendy, you have some questions?
Yes. First, though, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and talk to us tonight, because like we mentioned right before we started filming, your films are also my favorite of the live action. I think they are a bazillion times superior to the original ones, and I so much appreciate how it was clear that you showed respect to the original series in what you were doing. I never felt that the gang was being disrespected or that even the spirit of Scooby was being disrespected in any way, which I kind of felt with those first live action films. I didn't really think that they considered a lot of what Scooby fans were coming into it, you know, like, what is it about Scooby that we love? And I feel like they kind of disrespected that a little bit, but your two films were nothing like that. They were very much true to the characters, but still with a fresh spin on them. And so thank you for creating those and giving us a really awesome part of the Scooby canon that I feel doesn't get enough love. Even myself, I only got around to finally watching those films last year.
Oh, wow.
No particular reason that I hadn't watched them earlier, other than I just didn't even see them anywhere. I didn't see the DVDs. I didn't really, at the time, didn't have any stations that would be airing it. And then last year I thought, no, I'm going to watch those. And they were so good. I rewatched them recently. And typically if something's not animated, I'm not big on rewatching it, but they were even better the second time around. So honestly, 2 thumbs up for those films. They were really, really great. And you guys, you did Scooby justice, and we in the Scooby community, we appreciate that more than you know.
Thank you. Well, curious, how does the Scooby community feel about the fact that we kept Fred's hair brown? Is there problems with that?
That initially I thought I would have a problem with that, but you know, it really didn't matter. And then there is a scene in the second film where Fred gets a full-on classic Scooby-Doo moment with the blonde wig and the outfit, and that was just, I mean, we didn't need Fred to have blonde hair, but that moment was like, it was just perfection.
Oh, great. Yeah, they're posing, when they're posing as mannequins in the window.
Yes. Yeah.
That's also a classic Scooby device.
It was there. You paid such great tribute to it. Were you, I know you mentioned that your brother kind of made sure that you hit all of the Scooby notes. Were you a Scooby fan at all when you were growing up?
I'm sure I was. I don't remember being, you know, a fanatic or anything, but I know that I enjoyed it as a little kid. I'm sure I did. I'm sure I watched Scooby-Doo when I was a kid. My brother just had a better handle on sort of what we had to respect, what we had to honor. Things like posing as mannequins, that's kind of a classic Saturday morning cartoon trope, as well as, you know, winding up in a suit of armor, which I think we did under the third film. I think they wound up hiding in a suit of armor, which is just one of those great classic gags. I mean, how did they get in a suit of armor? It's so ridiculous.
But that's true to Scooby-Doo. Like, how do they get half the stuff? It's like they pull stuff out of their pockets and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, totally.
So I have to ask, can you tell us, was the brown hair because the actor didn't want to dye his hair, or was that planned that we don't need a blonde Fred? I
think that was the director. I think the director said he doesn't care if he's brunette. It might look weirder with a dye job or with a wig, that is, because they could have done it with a wig, I'm sure. But I think the director really just liked Robbie and just didn't feel he had to go that extra step of making him blonde. I was also proud of the fact that we had the first minority Velma, casting an Asian girl as Velma, which just also seemed to kind of make sense too, in a weird way, that Velma could be Asian.
And that worked. I think it worked.
It did. Yeah, everything worked.
I had asked Robbie Amell on Twitter why he didn't dye his hair, or why he didn't have blonde hair in the movie, and he said he didn't look good as a blonde. So
it's funny. Yeah, Robbie and Kaylee both went on to have pretty good careers so far.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they did really good in those Scooby films. I felt like it was all very well cast. Nick as Shaggy.
Oh yeah, perfect.
I prefer him to Matthew Lillard, and Matthew Lillard is amazing, but I think that Nick Shaggy was just so much so captured Shaggy's essence and his spirit, and he's my favorite part of the movies, I have to admit. The way that he played Shaggy just
great.
Made everyone meld with it. It was perfect. It was so good. So my first question, you've touched on it a little bit, but I'm going to ask a specific thing about it. So as we've said, Scooby had already been around for 40 years when you were tasked with making this new origin story film. I feel like more so now the Scooby community has gotten bigger, but I feel like it's been a very strong fan base all along, even 10 or so years ago. So did you feel any pressure knowing that you would be writing for something that was so well known and beloved by a lot of people? Like, was there pressure that you felt with that?
I don't think so. I just remember it being a blast. You know, I've had most of my experiences, there have been a couple bad experiences where we wind up working with either a producer or a studio. Norm of the North was not a very pleasant experience. I think the final product kind of reveals that, because it was heavily rewritten by the executive of all people towards the end. But it was just really a fun process. I didn't feel that pressure. I knew we could pull it off. I wasn't daunted by it at all. We just loved the material. We loved our story, and we had a heck of a time doing it together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So from your viewpoint as one of the writers, did you even notice, like, what did you perceive the fan reaction to be? Did you notice that it was, oh, people loved it, or people were indifferent, or did you see any of that?
I don't think we were tied in enough to the community at that point. Right now, I'm friends. Someone who's there's a young man who's an obsessive Scooby-Doo fan, and he reached out to me on Facebook Messenger, I think it was, and I've kept in touch with him. He just every once in a while just says hello, and we talk a little bit. But he's one of those people he's always trying to get a petition started to restart the third movie. He's got these grand ambitions. He thinks he could influence the studio to start new projects up again. But I use him a little bit as a barometer for those movies, because, like I said, he's such a loyal Scooby fan, and he really loves them as well.
Mm-hmm. In your opinion, is it easier to write a story for an existing property, or to start from scratch with your own characters and themes, and which would be your preference to work on?
I think it was easier working on a known quantity like that, just because you've got so much given to you. You've got all the characters given to you. You know you have to hit certain beats. You know it has to be a mystery. You know you have to have a great monster. And that was another decision like that we made, that was probably partially made with the studio, if not by the studio. I don't really remember that. We had to have a real monster. In a movie, you can't just unmask someone and it be fake the whole time. So that was a big decision that was made very early on. But I think, yeah, I'm going to say that it's a little easier to write with a known quantity like that, just because so much is already given to you.
Mm-hmm. If you could go back, is there anything about either of those two films that you would change, or are you completely satisfied with how they turned out?
I have to say I'm pretty satisfied. I really appreciate your kind words about them too. That really means something. I don't think I'd do anything differently. I wonder what my brother would say, but I think he's equally proud of them. They're probably the most fun we've ever had writing, besides maybe Gym Teacher. I don't know if you're familiar with our movie Gym Teacher that was on Nickelodeon. It's called Gym Teacher, the movie, with Christopher Maloney and Amy Sedaris. That was a lot of fun. We wrote that as like a Will Ferrell vehicle, but then it wound up not selling, and then eventually sold to Nickelodeon. But that was probably the most fun I've ever had writing. But Scoobies are the second favorite writing experiences. We just had a blast with them, and they came easily. They weren't a struggle. We didn't have to rack our brains. We just were able to hit all those beats without too much trouble.
Mm-hmm. One of the great things about those films, I feel like not a lot of people think about this, but in my opinion, I don't think of classic Scooby-Doo, Where Are You from 1969. Even though there's a lot of humor in that cartoon, I don't personally consider Scooby to be a comedy. I feel like the humor is kind of incidental. Is it written in? Yes, but it's being delivered in such a natural, organic way that yes, you're laughing and there's a lot of funny things, but it's not inherently, oh, this is a comedy, I'm supposed to be laughing. You're just laughing because it's so well written.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the newer series of Scooby, I feel like they are deliberately comedic.
Just a little bit more jokey.
Yes. And to me, like, that's not a lot of people love that. It's not my favorite thing. But the one thing that really stood out for me with both of these films is that I wouldn't call them comedies either. I feel like you guys, you nailed that. Here's a lot of funny things going on, really well written humor, but it's a mystery story.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a straight comedy. It is a story about a mystery. And for you guys to be able to nail that, like, that's, you watch any of the new Scooby content after your films, nobody else has managed to hit that, in my opinion. I think that you guys were the last ones that you understood, you understood the assignment of Scooby. There, it has to be funny, but the funny is secondary to the mystery. And if you can work those two things in together, you have like a really special product at the end. And you guys, you got that. So that is definitely one of the things I appreciated the most about both of those films, is that you caught the essence of Scooby, where today I feel like it's just forgotten. People don't remember what the spirit of Scooby used to be.
Right. That was probably the most challenging thing. If anything was really challenging, like I said, they were pretty easy to write, but the mystery, that's the thing where you got to start at the end and kind of work your way back, because
right.
We were worried that it was going to be too obviously Velma in the second movie. So that's the challenge of writing the movies like that. It's just how to string the mystery along without giving it away the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing, actually, if I have to say, I felt that at one point in the first movie, the assistant principal, I forget who he was, guidance counselor or assistant principal, whoever the culprit was at the end, there's one moment where he looks angry at something. I think it's the scene where he's saying, we've got to close the school, and the principal says, no, we're not going to close the school, and then he looks really angry at that. And that was the one moment where I thought, oh, did we tip our hand a little bit too much? And it was really a performance issue more than it was anything else. Like, did we show that he was too disappointed by that?
Right. Yeah, no, I thought you guys did a great job with the actual mystery part. I didn't catch on to who it was going to be. It wasn't obvious to me. And yet when at the reveal, though, it makes sense. And that's what you want in a mystery. I mean, it's fun if you can figure it out, I guess. But I always have to like tip my hat when I can't figure it out, and then it's like, oh, how did I not know that? But you didn't give anything away. It was just perfect.
Super.
So I have to ask, are there any kind of behind the scenes fun facts or anything that you could share with us that we wouldn't know about already?
I don't know. We weren't on set enough to really get to be a part of that and really get any real behind the scenes. I think we were only on set 2 or 3 days in the second movie. I think that was mostly because we were so close with the director at that point that he invited us on set. But what do I remember anything? The only thing I remember, this was just a comment by the directors, that he felt that Robbie was really green as an actor when they started. He felt like he was training him as an actor as he was directing. Certain things like when you're not speaking, you're still acting. Certain basic things like that about acting, because I don't know that Robbie had been in hardly anything at that point. So that's not really the type of juicy insider stuff you're looking for, I know. But I don't have much else, I'm afraid.
No, I think that's great. Anything is juicy, anything that we don't already know, because we love it so much that any piece of information that is new to us, we're going to be grateful to have it. And obviously they did a great job with him, because I'm actually currently watching the Flash series that Robbie was in the first few seasons, and he's so good. That was just a couple of years. I think Flash started in 2014. So it was just a couple of years after he worked on your Scooby movies.
Right.
And you can see how he's grown. I'm not sure how many things he did in between. I don't follow him as an actor, so I'm not sure. But by the time that he got to Flash, he was excellent in that too. So
that's great to
I'm
hear.
sure that his time on those films definitely did him good as an actor. And like, he meshed very well. Like, that was the other thing, is that the cast meshed well together. It didn't feel like anyone was out of place, or, you know, where there are times where you're like, wow, everybody worked well together except for this like one character, and I wish they wouldn't have done that. But I can't even think of anything that I would change about those films. They just came together like they were meant to be. So it's definitely great. If anybody's watching that hasn't seen those films yet, honestly, go and watch them, because they are some of the best modern Scooby that you can find out there.
Awesome.
Can I ask some extra questions that we didn't provide?
Yeah, absolutely. Ask anything you want. This is fun.
I'm nosy. What's your favorite project that it doesn't have to be the Scooby one, but any project that you have worked on in your career? What's your favorite project that you've done?
The favorite script that we wrote, I think, was Gym Teacher. And it was almost the most successful script we've ever had. It was, when you go out with a spec script, which they don't do much anymore, back in the heyday of spec scripts, that's when like a first-time writer could make $1 million on a big sale. That's the heyday of Hollywood back in the 80s, and a little bit in the 90s to a certain extent too. When we got out there, the specs business was still existent, but it was starting to crest a little bit. But the Gym Teacher script that we had was just so hot. What happens? You go to producers when you write a spec, and the producers all have deals with studios. So your goal is to get a producer at every studio who wants to take it into the studio, so to speak, to get the studio to buy it for them. That's what their deal does with the studio. The studio buys scripts for them and then puts the money up to produce them. The producer is just the one that just does the active creative producing. And we had producers fighting over that one. It was such a hot spec. And it got to every studio and then just died at the studio level. It just didn't sell. It was crushing. And then like I said, Nickelodeon picked it up, and then they produced it, which was great. They produced it with a lot of people that we really like too. But that was the best writing experience, I think. I think Norm of the North was one of the worst, because the executive we were working with was just not very good at his job, and he's the one that wound up in rewriting the script when all was said and done. But then again, that was a very lucrative job that we got paid very, very well with that, and we were actually credited as producers of the film as well, which is just a way to pay us more money in a more creative way, essentially. But so it was great for that reason. The other movie, but Scooby's were close second. The Dr. Dolittle movie was fun, but not as fun as Scooby. Yeah, I'd say that the Gym Teacher was the most fun script we've ever written, easily. But then the Scooby's right there after them. They were nothing but fun, really. I can't emphasize that enough.
That's good. That's good. And what would be your dream job or project to work on right now? If you could write about anything or write for anything. Well,
I've moved recently. I've since moved to Austin, Texas. So, I'm not in the business at all anymore. You really can't maintain a screenwriting career if you're not in LA. We moved here for my wife's career, and for the schools and stuff like that. And I miss it. I miss Hollywood a lot. But what I've been doing for the past 4 years is writing books. I've gone back to my original passion of novel writing, and written a bunch, have not been published yet. I've got a great agent who's trying to sell my most recent one right now, a young adult zombie book. and I'm just about to start a new one, a police procedural for adults. So if I had any dream come true, it would be to publish my first novel. That was something that Stephen and I actually, he came up with the original idea. We developed it a little bit together, and then I just took the ball and ran with it and just started writing it. And he realized that I was really got the voice and really had it down, so he just let me run with it. So even though that would be a shared project, I'd love to get a novel on my own, and I'd love to get my most recent one published, my young adult novel. But I just have such a special place in my heart for my first novel. I even wrote the sequel to it, hoping that I was going to get published, but not yet.
Well, fingers crossed, because it sounds really good, and I would certainly read it.
Thank you.
That's for sure. Do you have extra questions, Nikki?
So one thing that I wanted to bring up was The Mystery Begins was at the time the most watched telecast on Cartoon Network with 6.1 million viewers.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
So in 2009, it was the most watched.
Oh, that's awesome.
I just thought that was really cool. And
very cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for telling me that.
Yeah. Is there anything, like any stories that you have that you want to share with us about anything? Just
I don't know. I've covered so much about my other screenplays too that I've enjoyed writing. There was that Beethoven movie that was fun because that was a Christmas movie, and kind of an honor because John Cleese did a voiceover in the beginning of it. So it was neat to have John Cleese attached to one of our projects. Just like it was so cool to have Amy Sedaris in one of our films as well. She has a small part, but she was still in it. I respect her so much. But no, we've certainly covered Scooby. And it was a lot of fun talking to you guys.
Yeah, those movies are just great. Like Wendy said, it just all fit. There wasn't. I might have made Fred's hair blonde. That bothered me.
I understand. I understand that could be an issue for the Scooby community.
Yeah, but yeah, he kind of grew on me, you know, as the movie went on, and it was like, all right, well, he's not a bad actor. It's just, yeah, for me, the hair was kind of an issue.
Okay. I hear you.
Something else that you guys really treated well. A lot of us, I know Nikki and I especially, we talk a lot about how we're not the most crazy about romance in Scooby-Doo.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that you guys handled both Daphne and Fred, and then with the attempt between Velma and Shaggy in the second movie, you handled that in a way that I wasn't bothered by it at all.
Oh, good.
There's the series Mystery Incorporated, they tried to do the Shaggy Velma pairing, and it was so toxic and uncomfortable to watch. It was she was constantly criticizing him. Like, it was legitimately like a real life toxic relationship where you're supposed to be in love, but you're just constantly being berated by your partner, and you're being made to feel bad about yourself, and they're constantly trying to change who you are. And I so much appreciated that you guys did not approach it that way in the Lake Monster movie, because that, like, it was uncomfortable to watch even in animated form. I can't even imagine watching like a real live action doing it like that. But I definitely didn't bother me at all. I actually really enjoyed that story, and the way that you wrapped it up in the end, where it was like, you know, we can just be friends. Like, that's okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's one of the things about respecting the canon, where we had to reset it at the end. We couldn't leave it with them having a relationship, because that just wasn't what happens in Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
And we were able to sort of bring it around in a really effective way, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very much appreciate that. That was a really nice touch to get that, because so many times there's so many different iterations of it now at this point.
Right.
And a lot of it doesn't fit together, which I guess is not inherently bad, but you do sometimes. I mean, I've been watching and loving Scooby for 30 years, more than 30 years. So it's very much a part of my life. It's something that I really love. And it can be hard when you see people take this thing that means so much to you and it feels like they're not respecting it. And I can respect that any writer or actor or whatever, you want to put your own spin on things, and I totally get that. But I feel like you can do that while still staying true to the characters and the stories that you're telling. And I just feel like today that it's rare. It's getting more rare. So thank you for making something that we can enjoy within our beloved Scooby canon.
Right.
It's its own thing. It's unique, but it doesn't shatter everything that came before it. It just has a nice little place there where we can love it just as much as everything else, and it's not offensive or.
Yeah, well, we kept it. It was important to keep it innocent too. It had to be really innocent.
Yeah. We very much, as a whole, I want to tell you that the Scooby lovers out there, we appreciate how you treated those films.
Oh, good. Thank you so much.
And the over 6 million viewers, I mean, I think that speaks for itself, that the movie was really good.
That's great to hear. That's really great to hear.
Yeah. No, this
was so nice. Thank you so much. This was really a lot of fun. I love thinking back on those days and talking about Scooby-Doo. Like I said, I'm really honored to have been a part of that. And it means a lot to me that you guys like the film so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on and for creating it. And we really very much appreciate your time.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Very
much.
Daniel.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to another Scooby panel. I'm Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com. If you like these panels, please subscribe to my channel for more great discussions. A huge shout out to our patrons, Ross from ScoobyFan.net, Scooby-Doo of Roblox, and Ruth Elliott Hillston. If you would like to support the Scooby panel, please go to patreon.com/ScoobyAddicts. A very special thank you to writer Daniel Altiere and artist, blogger, and Scooby collector Wendy BRYDGE. Scooby Panel is available in podcast form on most podcast platforms or as a web series on YouTube. Scooby and Shaggy were voiced by Scott Innes. Check out Scott's website, onescottshop.com. Scooby Addicts artwork by Will Davenport. Video editing by Nikki Blake. Music composed and performed by Bovine Nightmares. Please join us next time for another Scooby panel.